Captain Amanda Blackwood stood at the command deck of the U.S. Constellation, her eyes fixed on the holographic display as another human colony winked out of existence. The massive gas giant Jupiter loomed behind them, its swirling storms a fitting backdrop for what could be humanity's final hours. "Status report on the Ganymede colony," she demanded, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding before her. Lieutenant Marcus Chen's fingers danced across his console. "Gone, ma'am. The Kraxan ships breached their domed defenses like they were paper. Our most advanced energy shields didn't even slow them down." Blackwood's jaw tightened. The year was 2157, and humanity was losing. Badly. The Kraxan Empire's purple-hued plasma weapons cut through their best defenses like hot knives through butter, while their crystalline ships shrugged off everything Earth could throw at them. "Show me the battle footage," she ordered, running her hand through her short brown hair, a nervous habit from her days as a military historian. The holographic display shifted, showing the final moments of the Ganymede Defense Fleet. Something caught her eye. Freeze frame. Enhanced Sector 7. The image zoomed in on a section of space where a piece of debris from an exploded human ship had struck a Kraxan vessel. The alien ship had performed an emergency maneuver to avoid the impact. "That's interesting," she muttered. "Play it again. Quarter speed." Lieutenant Chen looked up from his station. "Captain." "They dodged the debris," she said, more to herself than to him. Their shields could have easily deflected it, but they dodged. Why? Before she could pursue that thought further, the ship's AI chimed in. Multiple slip space ruptures detected. Kraxan battle group emerging. The command deck erupted into action. Through the viewport, space itself seemed to tear apart as 5 crystalline ships emerged, their faceted surfaces reflecting Jupiter's angry red storm. "Battle stations," Blackwood called out. "All hands prepare for combat. Engineering. Divert all power to forward shields." The Kraxan ships were beautiful in their alien way, like flying cathedrals made of living crystal. Their weapons were equally beautiful and deadly. Streams of purple energy lanced out, cutting through the void. "Evasive maneuvers," Blackwood ordered. "Return fire with everything we've got." The Constellation's energy weapons fired, their blue beams splashing harmlessly against the Kraxan shields. But as they fought, Blackwood kept watching the debris field from earlier battles. Every time a significant piece of wreckage drifted near a Kraxan ship, they moved to avoid it. "Helm, on my mark. Fire maneuvering thrusters, full burn," she said. "An idea forming." "Engineering. Prepare to vent plasma from the starboard nacelles." Her crew looked confused but followed orders. As a Kraxan ship moved in for the kill, Blackwood waited until the last possible second. Now, the Constellation's thrusters fired, and superheated plasma vented into space. The explosion created a cloud of superheated gas and ship debris. The Kraxan ship's shields easily handled the energy release, but they frantically maneuvered to avoid the physical debris. In that moment of vulnerability, their formation broke. It wasn't much, but it was enough for the Constellation to slip past them and jump to safety. Hours later, in her private quarter, Blackwood reviewed the battle footage again and again. She'd spent years studying military history before taking a command position, and something about this felt important. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter." Lieutenant Chen stepped in, holding a datapad. "Captain, we just decoded some intelligence from a raid on a Kraxan communication hub last week. I think you need to see this." She took the pad, and as she read, her eyes widened. The report contained details about Kraxan weapons development over the past 1,000 years. They'd moved from chemical energy weapons straight to plasma-based technology, completely skipping the development of projectile weapons. "They've never encountered kinetic weapons," she whispered, the implications hitting her like a physical blow. They don't even have a concept of them." She looked up at the lieutenant, a spark of hope in her eyes for the first time in months. "Get me a secure line to Earth Command. And find me every engineer and historian we have left. I think I just found our way to win this war." The underground bunker beneath the lunar surface hummed with nervous energy as Captain Amanda Blackwood faced the assembled military leadership. Behind her, a holographic display showed the schematics of what she dubbed Project Retrograde. "You want us to do what?" Admiral Harrison's voice dripped with skepticism. "While we're losing colonies by the day, you're proposing we waste resources on ancient technology." Before Blackwood could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. "Actually, she's proposing we win this war." Dr. Jack Reynolds strode into the room, his lab coat wrinkled and hair disheveled. The weapons designer had a reputation for brilliance, matched only by his eccentricity. Blackwood nodded to Reynolds, grateful for the support. "The Kraxan shields are calibrated for energy weapons because that's all they've ever known. But this," she gestured to the hologram, which now showed a modified railgun design, "this they have no defense against." Reynolds stepped forward, his eyes bright with excitement. "We've already run the simulations. Their shield technology creates a complex energy field that disperses plasma and laser fire. But physical projectiles, they pass right through like the shields don't even exist." The room erupted in murmurs. Admiral Harrison leaned forward. "Prove it." 20 minutes later, they stood in the lunar testing range. Through the reinforced windows, they could see a salvaged piece of Kraxan shield technology, recovered from a crashed scout ship. Reynolds had mounted it on a test platform. "First, standard energy weapons," Reynolds announced, typing commands into his console. A laser blast struck the shield, dissipating harmlessly. "Now watch this." He loaded a simple steel ball into what looked like an antique cannon. The military leaders exchanged skeptical glances. The bang echoed through the chamber. The ball passed through the shield as if it wasn't there, leaving a perfect hole in the target behind it. Dead silence fell over the room. "That's not possible," someone whispered. "Oh, it's very possible." Reynolds grinned. "The Kraxan made a classic mistake. They got so focused on advancing their technology that they forgot the basics. Their shields stop energy weapons because that's what they expected to face. But good old-fashioned kinetic energy, they never even considered it." Blackwood stepped forward. "We've already begun modifying the designs. Modern materials, computer-guided targeting systems, but the basic principle remains the same. Bullets, missiles, railguns, everything we abandoned when we thought energy weapons were the future." Admiral Harrison studied the data scrolling across his tablet. "The resource requirements are minimal compared to manufacturing new energy weapons," Blackwood finished. "We can convert existing factories in days. Every museum ship, every mothballed vessel can be retrofitted. We're not starting from scratch. We're going back to basics." Reynolds held up a simple bullet. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. We just need to remember them." The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Finally, he looked up. "How fast can you begin production?" "We already have," Blackwood replied. "Dr. Reynolds has been working with a small team since my initial discovery. We have prototype weapons ready for testing on 3 ships. The U.S. Gettysburg will be our first full conversion," Reynolds added. "She's small enough to hide but big enough to prove the concept. If we're right about this, if you're right about this, we might actually have a chance." Harrison finished. He straightened his uniform. "You have your authorization, Captain. Full resources, top priority. But remember, if this fails, we're sacrificing resources we can't afford to lose." Blackwood met his gaze steadily. "It won't fail, sir. The Kraxan think they've seen everything we can throw at them. They're about to learn how wrong they are." As they left the briefing room, Reynolds fell into step beside her. You know the best part. Every time they detect us building these weapons, they'll think we're desperate, resorting to obsolete technology. Their overconfidence will be their downfall." Blackwood allowed herself a small smile. For the first time since the war began, they had more than hope. They had a plan. The U.S. Gettysburg drifted silent and dark among the ice fields of Europa, her newly installed weapon systems powered down to avoid detection. On the bridge, Captain Amanda Blackwood watched the long-range sensors track 3 approaching Kraxan cruisers. "Status report," she whispered, though the enemy was still too far away to detect their communications. "All railgun systems charged and ready," Lieutenant Chen reported. "Missile tubes 1 through 20 loaded with kinetic penetrators. Point defense guns primed." Dr. Reynolds, who had insisted on being present for the first real combat test, checked his own readings. "The modifications are holding steady. Those museum pieces clean up nice when you add modern targeting systems." The Gettysburg had been transformed over the past 2 weeks. Her energy weapon banks had been replaced with banks of rail guns, while her missile tubes now held projectiles designed to fragment into clouds of tungsten rods. Most importantly, they'd installed what Reynolds called the surprise package, an entire broadside of 20th-century naval guns, updated with modern materials and fire control systems. "Enemy ships entering maximum weapons range," the tactical officer announced. "They're running active scans. They've spotted us." A communication channel crackled to life. The harsh, crystalline tones of Kraxan speech filled the bridge. Translated in real time: "Primitive human vessel, your energy signatures are pathetically weak. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Blackwood allowed herself a small smile. Send no response. All hands, battle stations. Execute Operation Vintage. The Kraxan ships drew closer, their crystal hulls gleaming in Europa's reflected light. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. "They're in position," Reynolds said, his voice tense with anticipation. "Their shields are optimized for energy weapons, just as we predicted." Blackwood took a deep breath. All batteries, fire at will. The Gettysburg's first salvo was unlike anything seen in space combat for a century. Rail guns accelerated tungsten shells to a significant fraction of light speed. Conventional guns spat streams of high-explosive rounds. Missile tubes launched swarms of kinetic penetrators. Through the bridge viewport, Blackwood watched as the barrage approached the lead Kraxan ship. Its shields flared beautiful patterns of purple and blue, ready to deflect energy weapons that never came. The projectiles passed through the shields as if they weren't there. The effect was catastrophic. The first rail gunshots punched clean through the crystal hull, shattering it from within. The conventional shells followed, their explosions tearing through unprotected corridors and command centers. The kinetic penetrators added to the devastation, creating clouds of high-speed shrapnel that shredded the ship's internal systems. "Direct hits confirmed," the tactical officer shouted, unable to contain his excitement. "Enemy Vessel 1 is breaking apart." The remaining Kraxan ships reacted with confusion, their formation breaking as they tried to understand what was happening. Their return fire, brilliant beams of plasma energy, was met by point defense guns that filled space with walls of lead and steel. "Second salvo, concentrate on the port target," Blackwood ordered, watching as the battle unfolded exactly as their simulations had predicted. The second Kraxan cruiser died even faster than the first, its hull peeling apart under the onslaught of physical projectiles. The third ship, finally realizing the danger, attempted to retreat. "Do we pursue?" Chen asked. Blackwood shook her head. "Let it go. We want survivors to report what happened here." She turned to Reynolds. "Your weapons performed beyond expectations, Doctor." Reynolds was already reviewing the combat data. "The penetration rates are even better than our tests suggested. Their hull material is strong against energy weapons, but surprisingly brittle when hit with kinetic impacts. It's like they never even considered the possibility. "Send word to Earth Command," Blackwood ordered. "Operation Vintage is a complete success. Begin full production of all weapon systems and start converting the rest of the fleet." As the crew celebrated around her, she watched the retreating Kraxan ship. Soon, the entire Empire would know that humanity had found their weakness, but by then, it would be too late. Captain Amanda Blackwood stood before the holographic display in Earth's primary command center, now hidden deep within the Rocky Mountains. The room was filled with military leaders and intelligence officers, all focused on the next phase of their plan. "The Kraxan are already scrambling to understand what happened at Europa," she began, bringing up images of intercepted alien communications. "Now is the time to launch Operation Masquerade." Dr. Reynolds stepped forward, his usually disheveled appearance replaced by an almost manic energy. "We've prepared multiple layers of disinformation. The first layer is already in motion. Leaked plans for a supposedly revolutionary quantum phase cannon." The hologram shifted to show complex technical diagrams, deliberately designed to be just plausible enough to be believable. The schematics were beautiful, intricate, and completely fictional. Meanwhile, Blackwood continued, "Every factory on Earth is being converted to produce what the Kraxan will see as primitive ammunition. Their spies are already reporting back about our desperate return to obsolete technology." Admiral Harrison, now a strong supporter after the Europa victory, nodded approvingly. "How are they responding to the bait?" Reynolds grinned and brought up another display. "Exactly as we hoped. Their research facilities are working overtime to modify their shields. They're convinced we found some way to phase energy weapons through their defenses. Every modification they make actually makes their shields more vulnerable to kinetic weapons," Blackwood added. "They're so focused on energy-based technology that they can't even conceive of a simple physical solution." The room's atmosphere was electric with suppressed excitement. Lieutenant Chen, recently promoted to head of intelligence operations, brought up his own report. "We've started leaking information about failed prototype tests," he explained, "making it look like we're struggling to perfect our new quantum technology. The Kraxan are intercepting this data and drawing exactly the wrong conclusions." Blackwood walked through the holographic display, pointing to different elements. "Here's the beautiful part. Every time they detect us moving old weapon systems or producing physical ammunition, they see it as a sign of desperation. Their intelligence reports are full of references to human regression." Speaking of which, Reynolds interjected, "The fake research facility on Mars is ready. When their next spy drone passes over, they'll see what appears to be an advanced quantum research center." He paused for effect. "It's actually an ammunition factory." The Admiral studied the reports carefully. "What about the risk of the truth leaking?" "We're using that too," Blackwood replied. "We've deliberately let some real information slip, mixed in with so much false data that they've dismissed it all as disinformation. The truth is hiding in plain sight." Chen brought up new intelligence reports. Their military command is now convinced that the Europa incident was a fluke, a lucky strike with a prototype weapon that we haven't been able to replicate. They're actually reducing shield coverage in some areas to boost their energy weapon defense. The room filled with grim chuckles. Reynolds rubbed his hands together with almost childlike glee. "They've taken the bait so completely that they're actually making our job easier. Every ship in their fleet is being modified to be more vulnerable to our real weapons." "Timeline for full fleet conversion?" Harrison asked. Blackwood brought up the production schedules. 3 more weeks. Every human ship, from battleships to converted cargo vessels, will be armed with updated versions of obsolete weapons. The Kraxan won't know what hit them until it's too late. "And the final piece," Reynolds added, "is almost ready. The quantum phase cannon prototype, the one that's supposed to fail spectacularly during its first test. He smiled. When that happens, the Kraxan will commit fully to their shield modifications, thinking they've dodged a bullet. No, Blackwood corrected with a slight smile. They'll think they've dodged an energy beam. Instead, they're about to face an arsenal of real bullets, and their overconfidence will be their undoing. As the meeting concluded, she looked out over the assembled leaders. The greatest trick in warfare isn't just making your enemy see what isn't there. It's making them dismiss what is there. We're not just fighting with weapons anymore. We're fighting with their own assumptions. The orbital shipyards above Mars hummed with activity as Captain Amanda Blackwood's shuttle approached. Through the viewport, she could see dozens of ships in various stages of conversion. Former luxury liners, mining vessels, and even ancient museum ships were being transformed into weapons of war. Beautiful, isn't it? Dr. Reynolds asked from the seat beside her. Never thought I'd see the day when we'd be installing 21st century weapons on a space yacht. The shuttle docked with the command platform, where Lieutenant Chen was waiting with his latest reports. The Kraxan intelligence vessels are watching us, just as planned. Their latest transmission called our fleet a collection of ancient garbage. Blackwood smiled as they walked through the station. Let them think that. Show me our progress. The first bay contained the Stellar Princess, once the most luxurious cruise ship in the solar system. Now her observation decks had been replaced with rail gun batteries, and her spacious cargo holds were filled with ammunition manufacturing facilities. She'll be ready in 2 days, the chief engineer reported. Those crystal hulls won't stand a chance against her new armament. The next bay held something even more impressive, the restored U.S. Constitution, retrieved from the Lunar Museum. The ancient vessel had been carefully modified for space combat while maintaining her historic appearance. This was Reynolds' pet project, Chen explained. He insisted we keep her looking original on the outside. Reynolds beamed with pride. The Kraxan saw us moving her and assumed we were desperately relocating historical artifacts. They have no idea she's now carrying the most advanced rail gun system we've ever built. They moved through bay after bay, each containing ships in various stages of transformation. Mining lasers were being replaced with kinetic bombardment systems. Cargo haulers were being fitted with missile tubes. Even scientific research vessels were being converted into high-speed attack craft. The best part, Reynolds said, pulling up technical specifications on his tablet, is how we're using their own arrogance against them. Look at this. He showed them footage of a recent test, a converted mining ship, its hull still bearing the corporate logos and rust stains of its former life, faced off against a captured Kraxan scout ship. The mining ship's apparently crude weapons tore through the advanced alien vessel like paper. Every ship we convert looks like junk to them, Blackwood noted. And that's exactly what we want. Their tour took them to the station's core, where the largest conversion project was underway. The U.S. Yorktown, an old colony transport, was being transformed into something entirely new. This is my masterpiece, Reynolds declared. We've kept the civilian transportation markings, but inside. He gestured to the holographic plans. 12 heavy rail gun batteries, 24 missile tubes, and a full complement of point defense guns, all hidden behind what looks like standard cargo panels. Chen's tablet chimed with a new intelligence report. The Kraxan just intercepted our supply requisitions. They're laughing about how we're desperately scrounging for primitive materials. Perfect, Blackwood said. Have we received the latest shipment from Earth? 300,000 rounds of advanced ammunition, all manufactured in what the Kraxan think are abandoned factories. Plus, the new targeting systems, disguised as navigation equipment, of course. They reached the command center, where a full display of the fleet's status filled the main screen. Over 200 ships were in various stages of conversion, each one a perfect blend of old technology and modern innovation. Time until the fleet is ready, Blackwood asked. 5 days for the main battle group, Chen reported. The support ships will follow 3 days later. Reynolds was already working on his tablet. I've got teams working around the clock. Every ship looks like it's been pulled from a museum or a scrapyard, but they're all carrying the most advanced targeting systems we've ever built. Blackwood studied the display, her expression determined. The Krexan think we're building this fleet out of desperation, using outdated technology, because we have no choice. She turned to face her team. Soon they'll learn that sometimes the old ways are the deadliest ways, and by the time they realize their mistake, it will be far too late. The rains of Saturn glittered like diamond dust against the void as Captain Amanda Blackwood surveyed the battlefield from the bridge of the U.S. Yorktown. Her scrapyard fleet had taken position among the ice and rock fragments, each ship looking like little more than salvaged junk. Krexan fleet approaching, Lieutenant Chen reported from his station, counting 37 ships, including their new flagship, the Crystal Throne. Dr. Reynolds whistled low. Would you look at those shield configurations? They've completely rebuilt their defense systems just to counter our non-existent quantum weapons. The Crystal Throne was a sight to behold, a massive vessel that seemed to be made of living crystal, its surface fracturing and refracting light in impossible ways. 3 layers of energy shields surrounded it, each one supposedly impenetrable. All ships maintain radio silence, Blackwood ordered. Let them think we're still trying to hide. The Krexan commander's transmission cut through the quiet. Primitive humans, your pathetic collection of ancient vessels shows your desperation. Surrender now, and we may preserve some of your species as study specimens. Reynolds couldn't help but grin. They really have no idea what's about to hit them, do they? Signal the fleet, Blackwood commanded. Execute Operation Avalanche. The battle began not with the flash of energy weapons, but with a subtle shift in the ring system itself. Hidden mass drivers, installed weeks earlier, began accelerating chunks of ice and rock to incredible speeds. The Krexan's first warning was their own sensors detecting movement in the rings. Their shields flared to life, ready to deflect energy attacks that never came. Mass drivers at full power, Chen reported. Ring fragments reaching attack velocity. The first wave hit the Krexan fleet like a hailstorm. Their shields, optimized to stop energy weapons, might as well have been missed against the solid projectiles. Ships began breaking apart under the barrage, their beautiful crystal hulls shattering. Now, Blackwood ordered, all ships commence full attack. The scrapyard fleet revealed its true nature. Cargo panels slid away to expose rail gun batteries. Observation decks transformed into missile launchers. Even the old U.S. Constitution joined the fight, her wooden exterior concealing state-of-the-art weapons. The Crystal Throne's commander was still trying to understand what was happening when the second wave hit. Tungsten rounds from 100 rail guns punctured its triple shields like they weren't there. Missiles loaded with kinetic penetrators added to the devastation. Their flagship is attempting to modify their shields, Reynolds observed, watching the data stream in. They still think this is some kind of energy weapon they can adapt to. Blackwood watched as the Crystal Throne's shields shifted and changed, each new configuration as useless as the last against physical projectiles. Launch the coup de grace. The U.S. Yorktown's main battery, what had once been the ship's grand ballroom, opened fire. 12 heavy rail guns, each firing a depleted uranium round the size of a car, found their mark. The Crystal Throne's beautiful hull cracked, then shattered, its pieces joining the debris of Saturn's rings. Enemy fleet breaking formation, Chen reported, his voice tight with excitement. They're running. Let them go, Blackwood ordered. But launch one more volley. Let's make sure they remember this day. As the surviving Kraxan ships fled, Reynolds studied the battlefield data. You know what the most ironic part is. If they had just kept their original shield configuration, they might have had a better chance. All those modifications they made to stop our advanced weapons actually made them more vulnerable to the simple stuff. Blackwood nodded, watching the last Kraxan ships disappear into FTL. Sometimes the most dangerous trap is the one you set for yourself. They were so convinced of their technological superiority that they couldn't see the simple truth. And the truth is, Chen asked. The truth is that a rock thrown hard enough will break any window, no matter how advanced the glass. She turned to her crew. Send word to Earth Command. The Battle of Saturn is won. The Kraxan fleet is broken. And humanity just proved that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The observation deck of the Lunar Science Facility was packed with an unusual audience. Captured Kraxan scientists and engineers sat in the front row, their crystalline features reflecting the light from Dr. Reynolds' holographic display. Behind them, human military leaders and scientists gathered to witness what Captain Amanda Blackwood had dubbed the final lesson. Let's begin with basic physics, Reynolds said, bouncing on his heels with barely contained excitement. Something your civilization seems to have skipped in your rush to master energy weapons. He brought up an image of a simple bullet. This is a kinetic energy projectile. Nothing fancy. No quantum fields, no plasma containment, just a piece of metal moving very, very fast. One of the Kraxan scientists, their chief weapons developer, raised a crystal-studded hand. But it is primitive technology. Our energy weapons are beautiful, advanced, and completely missed the point. Blackwood interrupted, stepping forward. Show them the comparison, Doctor. Reynolds nodded and split the display. On one side, a Kraxan energy weapon fired at a target. On the other, a railgun launch. Watch the energy disbursement patterns. The footage played in slow motion. The energy weapon's blast was magnificent, a swirling vortex of plasma that could melt through most materials. The railgun's projectile was simply there one moment and gone the next, leaving a clean hole through the target. Your shields, Reynolds continued, were designed to handle energy transfer. They create complex fields that can disperse plasma, deflect lasers, and absorb radiation. But they can't stop physical objects because you never considered them a threat. Lieutenant Chen, now head of strategic analysis, added his own data to the display. You advanced from chemical energy weapons directly to plasma-based systems. You never developed projectile weapons because your early atmosphere was too dense for them to be effective. The Kraxan scientists shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their lead researcher spoke up. But such simple weapons, the mathematics, are actually more complex than your energy weapons, Reynolds said with a grin. Here's the real irony. You think kinetic weapons are primitive because they're simple in principle, but calculating trajectories in three-dimensional space, accounting for gravitational forces, managing recoil in vacuum. These are incredibly complex problems we solved centuries ago. Blackwood stepped forward again. Your civilization's progress went in a straight line. Ours zigzagged. We tried everything, kept what worked, and most importantly, we remember our history. The display changed to show footage from the Battle of Saturn. Your ships were beautiful, Reynolds continued. Your shields were the most advanced energy management systems we've ever seen. But against simple physics, against mass times acceleration, he shrugged. They might as well have been made of paper. One of the junior Kraxan engineers suddenly straightened, understanding dawning in their crystalline eyes. The quantum weapon development was a lie, Chen confirmed. We leaked false plans, knowing you would focus on defending against what you thought was coming. Every modification you made to your shields actually made them more vulnerable to kinetic weapons. Reynolds brought up the final display. A simple physics equation for kinetic energy. This is what defeated your empire. Not advanced technology, not superior numbers, just basic physics that your civilization never bothered to explore. The room was silent as the implications sank in. Centuries of technological development, rendered obsolete by principles taught in human high schools. The greatest danger in science, Blackwood concluded, isn't in not knowing something. It's in thinking you know everything. Your civilization advanced so far in one direction that you forgot to look behind you. As the presentation ended, Reynolds couldn't resist one final demonstration. He pulled out an ancient mechanical clock from his pocket. The Kraxan scientists leaned forward, puzzled by its ticking. Sometimes, he said, winding the clock, the old ways are the best ways. Not because they're simple, but because they're proven. You built your defenses against the weapons you thought we'd use. We beat you with the weapons you thought we'd outgrown. The treaty room in Geneva had been restored to its original 21st century appearance. For this historic occasion, Captain Amanda Blackwood stood by the window, watching as both human and Kraxan representatives gathered around the ancient wooden table. "Quite a statement you're making," Dr. Reynolds said, joining her at the window. "Using paper and ink instead of digital signatures." Blackwood smiled. "The Kraxan need to understand that old doesn't mean obsolete. Every choice we make today reinforces that lesson." The Kraxan High Commander, their crystalline form dulled by the burden of defeat, approached them. "We have reviewed the final terms. There is wisdom in them." Lieutenant Chen, now Colonel Chen, entered with the treaty documents, real paper, bound in leather. "Everything is ready, Captain." The room fell silent as Blackwood took her place at the head of the table. The treaty that would end the war and reshape the galaxy lay before them, written with an ancient fountain pen on pages that could have come from Earth's past. "Before we sign," the Kraxan commander said, "tell me something. When did you know? When did you realize our weakness?" Blackwood picked up the fountain pen, testing its weight. It wasn't just one moment. It was understanding something about progress that your people had forgotten. Technology doesn't just move forward. It expands in all directions. Reynolds nodded, adding, "Your civilization saw technology as a linear path. Ours was more like a tree, growing new branches while keeping its roots strong." "And now?" the commander asked. "Now we move forward together," Blackwood replied. "The treaty includes technology exchange programs. You'll learn about kinetic weapons and mechanical systems. We'll learn about your energy management and crystal engineering. Both sides will be stronger for it." The signing ceremony began. Each signature was made with the same fountain pen, a deliberate choice that made the Kraxan representatives slightly uncomfortable. Their discomfort with primitive technology was still evident. As the last signature was added, Chen brought forward another surprise. "A gift for both delegations," he announced, revealing two objects. The first was a perfectly crafted mechanical watch, its gears visible through crystal faces. The second was a Kraxan energy crystal, modified to power a simple electric light. Both represented the marriage of old and new technologies. "These symbols," Blackwood explained, "represent our future. The watch shows that simple mechanisms can be both beautiful and reliable. The crystal shows that advanced technology can be applied to basic principles. Together, they show us the path forward." The Kraxan commander studied the watch with new interest. "We have already begun implementing some of your primitive technologies. Our scientists are fascinated by the possibilities we overlooked." Reynolds couldn't help but grin. "And our engineers are having a field day with your crystal tech. Turns out there's no such thing as obsolete technology, just different tools for different jobs." As the delegations mingled, Blackwood found herself back at the window, looking at the rebuilt city beyond. The war had changed everything, but not in the way anyone had expected. "You know what the real victory was," she said to Reynolds and Chen as they joined her. "Not defeating the Kraxen, but teaching them. And ourselves. That progress isn't about abandoning the past. It's about building on it." Chen nodded. "The museums are already being converted into research centers. Every piece of outdated technology is being studied with new eyes." "And the Kraxen?" Reynolds asked. "They're installing rail guns on their new ships," Blackwood said with a smile. "Right alongside their plasma cannons. They're learning that the best defense isn't just the most advanced one. It's the most comprehensive one." As the sun set over Geneva, its light caught the crystal spires of the new Kraxen embassy, built next to the restored old city hall. The blend of styles was strange but striking, much like the future that now lay before them. "To the future," Blackwood said, raising a glass of very old wine, "built on the foundations of the past." "And to the lesson we all learned," Reynolds added. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, not because they're old, but because they work."